All right, all right, all right. Happy Tuesday. How y'all doing? Hope you're doing well. Wherever you're tuning in from, welcome to this week's edition of the Savvy Home Seller. What the heck's going on in the housing market show? Where we talk about all things in the housing market and specifically give you the information that you should have and need to advocate for yourself as a home buyer, home seller. That's what we're trying to do. That's what I try to do every week. I try to educate you, give you all the articles, all the information, break it down, behind the scenes, all the things, so that you can have a say. Because no one's out there protecting you these days, and I think everybody needs to go to know what's happening. Because as I talk about every week, the one thing about the real estate industry, and I've been doing this game for almost 30 years, is in a lot of ways it's lacking a lot of transparency. But we have a lot to get into today, and I've got a bunch of topics that I want to cover. So I'm gonna dig right into to the housekeeping items, which first and foremost, you gotta check out the poll. Check out the poll. Make sure you log. Want to know what your feelings are about Zillow. We're talking about Zillow today, and there's a brand new lawsuit, not the one with Compass, but this is a brand new lawsuit that was filed last week, and it has to do with disclosures to buyers and how it's costing them lots of money, potentially unscrupulous acts, some unscrupulous activity going on with Zillow. So we're going to talk about that. Make sure you post your wins. If you have any wins this week, we want to hear about it. What happened if you get an offer accepted on your home that you're trying to sell or you're trying to buy. You got through a difficult negotiation. Maybe you did some house, prep. Maybe you just figured out what the heck you're going to do. You want to move, but you have no idea where to start, and you did the thing, or you just cleaned out your closet. Post your wins. You know what? It gets the good mojo going. So we want to hear about it. If you have questions, make sure you put QQQ in the chat. I'm a solo show here, so if you have questions, I want to make sure that I get to you. So QQQ kind of helps me, kind of sets it apart, so I can make sure I don't skip you. So today we're talking about, of course, the Zillow lawsuit. I'm going to dig into that, give you my opinion, as I always do. And I got some opinions this week. We're also going to dig into referral fees, because a big part of this lawsuit has to do with undisclosed referral fees. And those that may be new to my channel or new to this live stream may not know that I'm hot under the collar for transparency. I maybe, consider me like anti-establishment. I am Gen X after all. And if anything, Gen Xers like anti-establishment, go against the grain. I don't like a lot what's happening in the real estate industry, but you know what? There's ways to protect yourself, and there's ways to make sure you don't get taken advantage of. So we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna check in on the mortgage rates, because last week the Fed met. We talked a lot about what might happen with the mortgage rates last week. The Fed met Tuesday, Wednesday, and they did as predicted. Cut the rate a quarter of basis point. But the outcome was not on the mortgage rates. It wasn't what a lot of folks expected. So we talked about it. I'm going to catch up on where things are at right now, and kind of talk, dig into that a little bit. And then I want to give you some updates on mortgage applications and foreclosure data. So some new data came down about the foreclosure activity. There's a lot of misinformation circulating, a lot of wrong opinions, I guess, or whatnot on the current state of mortgage applications. I hear a lot, floating through social media, people commenting, nobody's buying a house, nobody's buying a house. Well, the data would tell us otherwise. The market is not healthy. It is not affordable. It is not fun. However, it's not dead. So I want to give you the data because at the end of the day, as I always say, the data doesn't lie. It is what it is. It's not my opinion. I interpret my own opinion based on what I see on the data, but the numbers are the numbers. It is what it is, folks. Whether we like it or not, it is what it is. I'm gonna jump over the chat here and see what's popping. I see a lot of familiar faces. We got Nicole Olson in the house. Hello, hello, my friend. We got Paul and Angie, Matt. Yeah, I feel like again romper room, which I love doing this. Calling out all my friends. Clark down in Atlanta. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. Good to see you. Let's see. Manuel says, I keep waiting for Zillow to get a class action suit after it was disclosed that they were buying and selling properties. Zillow never could qualify home prices on their site. I'm not a fan of Zillow. I'm not anti Zillow for the sake of being anti Zillow. I think their estimates are not completely clarified to the public. I think they're misleading to a certain degree. But we're going to get into some stuff that is other stuff that they didn't disclose. You're keeping us on the edge of our seat here, Paul. Close to a win. Tell you next week. Oh boy, we'll be waiting. Let's see. We got Vegas. Jimmy House has listed pictures. Look great. Been on the market a couple of days. Just one showing so far, but trusting the process, being patient. Kudos to you, my friend. Kudos. Being patient is the single hardest part. There's no question about it. And, if you've got good guidance and you've done all the research, that's what you got to do. So good for you. Mike Lex says, getting ready to paint the interior of my house, declutter every room, boxes I haven't seen in years. My daughter's getting ready to move out, my oldest kiddo, and her partner, a boyfriend of many, many, many years. They met in marching band in high school. That was a long time ago. Yeah, she's packing up all her stuff and put it in the garage for preparation of moving out. I told her label, because there will be boxes that you don't get to for a while. Why? Because life happens. Life happens, and you're like, I don't need to go through that memento box right now. Yeah, I went through one not too long ago that was 25 years waiting for me to open it. Yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. Miss H says, thank you for talking about the Zillow lawsuit. I saw a bit about it, but didn't really get into it much, waiting for your review. This is, this is exactly why I want to talk about this stuff, because I'm sure y'all have questions about this. And, sometimes depending on who writes the article, who writes the article, where the source is, what the website is, the channel is, as we know in the society that we're in, it can be skewed. The information gets skewed, and when you see conflicting reports, how do you know what's up, which way is up, which way is down? And that's why I want to try to give you my little view, give you my view on it, and then you guys can take it from there. All right, I'm gonna. Paul's got a question. Have you heard of an independent agent, home showing, who provides a buyer a third opinion that looks a lot like an appraisal? I have not. Interesting. I almost feel like that would be a service that is taking advantage. I talk a lot about my strong opinion, 80-20 rule. Honestly, it's probably 90-10, where legitimately, in my opinion, this is not based on data. This is what I've seen on the front lines day after day after day for almost 30 years. 80% of the real estate industry right at this very moment doesn't know. They're not worth half of what they're being paid. I'm sorry. It is what it is. They're either, unskilled, or they're unprofessional, or they're just lazy. And a service like that would be an extra service that a buyer would pay for something that a good agent should already do in the beginning. So that kind of makes me frustrated, because you guys shouldn't be paying any more money than you already are. You're already paying good money for all this stuff, and the cost of homes and everything else being outright, so challenging. That sounds like someone is opportunistic. That's what it sounds like, Paul. But I'm going to keep my eyes peeled. Thank you for bringing that up. We got Fabiano in the house and all the stuff. Boy, we get, Tracy says, supposed to close in 6 days on purchase. Just found out I need a structural engineer. Oh no, inspection report since it's a manufactured home. Wish the mortgage lender would have told us that sooner. Oh man, sometimes that stuff can be, I hate surprises. I hate surprises. Sometimes you can anticipate things based on experiential knowledge. Oftentimes if I'm dealing with a buyer, working with a buyer, or working with a seller, and an offer comes in that's a FHA or a VA, those are not bad loan products, but they do have strings attached. And the process is different than a conventional mortgage. And even though they don't volunteer information, I know a couple extra questions to ask based on my previous experiences. Sometimes things can be avoided, but sometimes not, because if you have an underwriter that is super picky, who's just, going through the check boxes, whether it makes sense or not, sometimes you get stuck in a tough situation. So I'm really sorry you're going through that. I hope you have to keep us posted and let me know, let us know how it works out for you. So, all right, let's dig in because I want to get through this. I want to make sure I have enough time so you guys can ask your questions and digest and all this stuff. Because some of this stuff is getting, it gets right into the technical weeds and behind the scenes stuff, which a lot of, the consumers don't really get involved in. All you guys want to do is sell your house or buy your house. And this is all stuff behind the scenes that you shouldn't have to worry about. You shouldn't have to know all the inner workings in order to protect yourself, but that's not where we're at in this day and age. So the title, this is from Housing Wire. Zillow faces class action lawsuit over premier agent flex commission. So it says Zillow is facing yet another lawsuit. They were actually sued by Compass for their requirements on, and I won't get into that too much. I don't want to get into the weeds on that too much, but essentially they had some, Zillow was making up their own rules in terms of when Compass agents were allowed to, or they're being forced to list their properties for sale in Zillow and all the things. It's all nonsense, in my opinion. It's like, come on, Zillow, give me a break. You're not making enough money. Anyways, it says filed on Friday. So this article was on Friday. So this was filed on that day. In U.S. District Court in Seattle, the lawsuit alleges that the portal tricks consumers into using agents affiliated with Zillow through their Flex and Premier agent programs, resulting in inflated home prices. Now I'm going to go through this and then I'll give you kind of like the inside scoop or my take on this, on what I see. The suit was filed by Alushard. I'm going to say that correctly. Alushard Taylor, who purchased a home in Portland, Oregon in 2022 using a Zillow affiliate agent. According to the complaint, when Taylor clicked on the contact agent button, and it actually says, contact agent or schedule a showing button next to the listing he was interested in, he assumed he was contacting the listing agent, but instead he was routed to a Zillow affiliated agent. This happens all the time. All the time. I know as an agent, they're not putting you in contact with a listing agent, but it is not and has never been made clear on the Zillow website that that's what's happening behind the scenes. You click and most consumers, this is not your fault. You're not scrolling through to confirm that the person that you're talking to is a listing agent. I think it's, you're on the site, you're assuming that it's the listing agent. It's not a bad assumption. But it says Taylor is being represented by Steve W. Burnham, a named partner in class action litigation firm Hagens, Berman, Sobel, Shapiro, Japers can't talk tonight, LLP, the same firm that represented plaintiffs in the Moher Commission lawsuit. The suit claims that when a consumer clicks the contact agent button on a listing on Zillow, they are directed to the Zillow affiliated agent. and not the listing agent of the property. It says the consumers are then directed to sign the Zillow's touring agreement, which promises the buyers that the agent's services are free. But this is deceptive and not true. If the sale goes through, the buyer's agent still receives a commission. Okay, I'm going to stop there right there and say that if there's one thing that came out of that NAR lawsuit last year, it was because the main one of the the seller was complaining that they had to pay for the seller's listing agent fee and the buyer's agent fee. It wasn't disclosed that that there was an option to pay the buyer agent fee and yada yada and the whole 9 yards. As a result of that, buyer's agents are now required to have a conversation with the buyer, which is something they should have been doing in the first place. 80% agents were not doing that. They were going through and saying, "Listen, buyer, Mr. Buyer, my services are free." Why? Because the buyer's agent fee was automatically coming from the seller's agent side. They didn't have to work for it. They didn't have to negotiate it. They didn't have to do anything but sit back and collect the money. Therefore, they could say with confidence to the buyer, because the buyer was never put on the hook to pay the fee, "My services are free," which was truly misleading to the buyer agent, to the buyer, because the services are not free. Nobody works for free. Nobody works for free. That doesn't make any sense. Um, the Zillow touring agreement, they're talking about buyer's agent agreement. That's all it is. Zillow is a broker. They are under, they should be held to the same standards of if it's going to be a Zillow's touring agreement, it should be a buyer's agent agreement, period. And that's what it is. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's all it is. It says, in addition, if the Zillow affiliated agent is what they call a flex agent, he or she has to pay Zillow up to 40% of the agent's commission. This cut of the commission paid to Zillow for no services rendered related to the real estate sale is never disclosed to the buyer or seller. Okay, so a couple things that I want to tell you guys. When a real estate agent is an agent that is not doing their business relationally, okay, which is basically you doing right by your clients, and then your clients refer you to you to other clients as a referral, word of mouth. I had one of those, met with her yesterday, first time home buyer, past client, called me up, said, my friend wants to buy her house, she doesn't know where to start. I said, I'll take good care of her. Boom. Those agents that do that business, we call it a transactional agent. They need leads. I hate that word, leads. I hate it with a passion. When it comes to this flex agent program, agents pay for leads, period. Now, realtor.com does it. Zillow does it. There's a lot of companies out there that will charge agents big bucks for the name of somebody who wants to buy or sell. They're not qualified. The agents are not qualified. Their only qualification is that you will pay them the money. That's it. There's no screening. There's no checking background. There's no background checks. There's no disclosure to the buyer or seller, period. This is what they're talking about. It's gross. I'll be honest, 30 years, I've never done it. I've never signed up, and man, they hound me on a regular basis trying to get into my pocket. And I have never and will never do that personal decision, because I think it goes against what my, how I want to conduct my business, but it happens all the time. This is not something just a Zillow related issue. It's a lot of portals sell leads, but they don't tell the consumer that. Okay, so the article goes on, and I got an issue with this next paragraph. It says the complaint argues that if buyers were directed to the listing agent instead of a Zillow affiliate agent, they would be better positioned to negotiate a lower purchase price because the seller would not have to pay commissions to the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. Okay, I had to read this 5 times, guys. Probably more than 5 times because it didn't make sense. If a seller has a contractual agreement with a listing agent, that listing agent is getting paid, period. It doesn't matter who buys the property, that listing agent is getting paid, period. Doesn't, to say that they could have avoided paying the seller's agent if they had disclosed this, if a buyer goes directly to this, number one, they can't go directly to the seller because the seller has a contractual agreement with the listing agent. When they hit the button, it's going to the listing agent. It's not going to the seller. It's going to the listing agent. The listing agent's getting paid. If the other part of this is that, because the seller would not have to pay commissions to the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. Now, the second part of that is not untrue. If you click on that button and say you did get directed and you got in touch with the listing agent, or maybe you didn't click the button, you just scrolled down enough so you could see listed by the name of the company, the name of the agent, and the telephone number. Now, I am not saying this is the way I would recommend going for multiple reasons that we can talk about. But when you do that and you go directly to the listing agent to discuss this particular property with no buyer's agent, presumably there isn't an agent fee. However, there's so many variables. If you have an 80% agent, is it possible that that listing agent is going to manipulate the seller to pay him double? Yes. Is it possible that listing agent is going to be a dual agent? Yes. 110%. Now, if you have a 20% agent, I call them, those are the ethical agents, the agents that always put the client first, no matter what. They're transparent, they're professional, they have experiential knowledge in their industry, they have transaction experience. They are what my picture of why we're doing this to begin with. This would not happen. However, that being said, if a buyer comes directly to me and I'm handling both sides of the transaction, I'm doing double the work. I'm not representing the buyer, but I'm doing double the work. So do I ask for a little bit more to compensate me for my time? Because at the end of the day, it's a business, and the business has to be so you can run your business ethically, but still put food on the table. Yes. So the fact that you could negotiate a lower sale price, just strictly on the basis of not having to pay the commission, that has been proven not to be true. And why do I say that? Because after the NAR lawsuit, after the course of the last year, and I actually did an update on this. I did a video not too long ago that kind of, did a 12-month revisit where we are today. And and it has actually changed even more. Commissions are actually higher than they were pre-NAR lawsuit. Everyone was, the government, we're going to lower the prices and, we're going to lower the commissions. And the exact opposite has happened. The exact opposite has happened. More commissions are now being paid now than before. This is the God honest truth. The article goes on to say it also incentivizes the Zillow flex agents to prioritize receiving his or her full commission at all costs, even if the buyer loses the bidding process. Now, this I don't understand. Now, yes, they will, if it's a matter of getting paid, they will manipulate and push an 80% agent, unscrupulous agent, will push that buyer to get that offer accepted because that is the only way they're making bank. However, I don't agree with even if the buyer loses the bidding process, because if the buyer loses the bidding process, nobody gets paid. So that doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that? To manipulate them at all costs, even if they lose the house? Well, that doesn't make any sense at all, because then they, from a dishonest agent, is going to lose out. It says, since the flex agents only effectively receive a 1% commission from the purchase of a home after paying the hidden Zillow fees and commissions to their firms, again, they can't say this because there is no fixed pricing when it comes to buyer agents. And, this law firm, this lawsuit, they cannot begin to. There's so many different models, and I'm going to get into this in a second when I get into referrals. There is not a one size fits all when it comes to real estate agent models. Um, some fees are higher, some fees are lower to their brokerages. How much does the brokerage keep and all the things? You can't assume that it's 1%. You can't, because you don't know what the buyer agent is doing behind the scenes with the buyer. The buyer's agent may be ratcheting up the fee to compensate for that 40% that they have to pay out to Zillow. Unscrupulous agents do that. They do. And you guys have asked me about that, because I do receive a referral fee when I connect you to one of my referral partners. But we're going to talk about that and how to know the difference, on how referral fees are treated and handled. It says they have no practical flexibility in negotiating a lower commission. They're paying the Zillow a percentage. Zillow does not, unless I've never been a flex agent, so unless there's some information in their contract that states that they have to charge a certain percentage, but an agent is an agent. They can do whatever the heck they want to do, and they can charge more if they want to charge more. That I don't agree with. I don't agree with that statement at all. I think they don't understand the real estate. This is my big gripe with the NAR lawsuit is there's so much misunderstanding on how the real estate industry actually works. The reporters commenting on this stuff, and even our government commenting on how agents, this and that, and this is what they should be doing, and all they should be taking less money and, giving it back to what are you talking about? They don't even know how our business actually operates behind the scenes. It goes on to say that sellers are stuck with paying 6% commission or more because the buyer flex agent is receiving such a paltry sum in return, therefore increasing the purchase price of the home for the buyer. Zillow's scheme has the intent and the effect of unlawfully maintaining high and inflexible commissions that drive up the prices that buyers pay. Okay, guys. So, oh boy, okay. This is the stuff that really gets me going. Because I am a seller. I sign a contract with a listing agent. Goes into MLS. It goes into Zillow. All my listings are on Zillow. Why? Because it automatically aggregates. You put a listing in MLS and it goes, my listings go all through the internet. That's how it works. Aggregating out, try to get in front of as many eyeballs as possible, give you as much exposure as possible. Okay. The contract is between me and the listing agent, and what I'm willing to pay, what we work out, what we negotiate between us. Nothing to do with the buyer. Now, we will have a separate conversation about if anything, I'm going to pay a buyer's agent. But the discussion between as far as the seller's commission, the seller listing agent commission, is between me and the seller. The fact that they're saying that sellers are stuck with paying 6% commission or more because of the buyer flex agent. Okay, listing a seller has nothing to do with what happens on the buyer agent side. Zero. There's there's the claimant and the defendant in a courtroom. It's separate. It's completely separate. If the buyer agent, if you click on view this listing on one of my listings, and Zillow sends you to another agent to show you that property, that has nothing to do with me. Zillow charges that buyer agent 40%. Nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with how much commission the sellers pay. Now, the seller will decide what, if anything, they compensate with a buyer's agent based on what's in the offer and all the things. Sellers they're not stuck. They're not stuck to do anything. If the buyer's agent, the Zillow Flex agent, comes to the table and says, I want a 4% commission, You know what? Great. Let's look at the numbers. I sit down with the seller and say, okay, look at the net and see what the numbers look like. But the sellers are not stuck doing anything. They don't have to accept the offer. This kind of stuff is why I want to talk to you guys. This is why I want to bring this up and have this conversation, because someone not knowing, a consumer reading this, this is super, super misleading, because this is not the way it works. It goes on to say, according to the complaint, and I'm going to get to you guys in the chat in a second. According to the complaint, Zillow has furthered its scheme. I mean, I don't. You know what? I mean, can you guys get like oh gosh, Despicable Me vibes going on here? You know, or Austin Powers. You know, we're gonna make $1 million. It's, is it a scheme? I don't think so. I think it's bad business. What it is. But anyways, through its listing standards policy, which, and this is what I was alluding to earlier, which requires sellers to make make their property available for display on Zillow within 1 business day of publicly advertising the property. This right here is what this is what you hire your agent to monitor. There's a reason why, as soon as a property is available, it aggregates out to all the different listing websites. It is available within 1 business day. That is, it's available to be seen. Now, available to be shown, whole nother conversation. That is entirely possible. It happens all the time, delayed showings. It says this policy effectively requires sellers and their agents to forego using other initial methods to advertise the home sale. The effect of this policy is to inflate the unjustly earned profits Zillow receives from its deceptive conduct as it continues to increase its dominance of the market. So the policy effectively requiring sellers and their agents to forego using other initial methods to advertise their home sale. This is what Compass was suing about. They want to reserve the right to not list it on Zillow if the home seller chooses that path. Is that common? It's not. It's not. Why would you want to restrict having eyeballs on your property? Why? You go through all the trouble, blood, sweat, and tears, get the house ready. You finally get to the point where you're putting it on the market. Of course, you want as many people as you want and you can to get in, to see the house. That's kind of the point. That's kind of the point. I think actually that's pretty much. I don't want to get too deeply into that, but I want to check the comments here, see where you guys are at, because this stuff is just this stuff is bonkers, crazy. All right. Let's see here. Let's see. I'm gonna just scroll backwards here. Da, 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 da. All right. Let me get back here. See where we're at. Angie says Zillow should have a disclaimer on all posted listings mentioning this agent practice, and that's exactly what this lawsuit is trying to do. 110%, and I couldn't agree more. Fact Dwellers says we are going to be selling our home in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and moving to Providence, Rhode Island. Is there any areas to stay away from? I watch your videos. I see that you are in the. So I'm in Massachusetts, actually, Plymouth, Massachusetts, south of Boston, hour south of Boston. I don't know Providence, and even then, I couldn't answer that question. For two reasons. Number one, we have we have to be very careful as real estate agents, to not be accused of steering. Steering is a big offense. I could lose my license for steering. To say, don't buy here because of XYZ, certain class, certain whatever. However, if you're like, hey, I want to live in an area that has sidewalks. I want to live in an area that's close to downtown. I want to live in an area, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, of course. But to say that to say that agents just areas to stay away from, you got to talk to somebody who is in Providence, Rhode Island. And I got a couple great agents and my referral partners down there that I can connect you with. So you can click the link in the description. Send me your information, and I can help you out there. Charlton says, question on ABC News. More and more people are living in RVs. Can't afford home prices just here. Lennar lowering prices 2019. It's a big thing. 110%. They're, living in RVs by choice. Especially boomers, that are not working. They're not tied down to a location. Just my grandparents, been gone for many years, but they did that after retirement. They bought an RV and they didn't live in it, but they spent half the year traveling. And they lived in Western Mass, and they were all the way down in Mexico and all over the country, and I have all the mementos to show for it. But yeah, I mean, you can get a nice, if you sell your house, you got 50,000, you got 100,000, $150,000 cash. What's that going to buy you for a home? Not much. But can you get a nice RV for 150,000? Heck yeah. So, but it's a lifestyle, and I think people are wanting to see the world, wanting to see new places. Maybe that's the thing. But yeah, I've heard the same thing, Charlton. Let's see. Charleston says, price is finally falling. Actually, I'm going to get into some data about that. And I didn't actually include that on my list of topics, but I do have some update, if we can get to it, some new updated data on which areas are the top buyers markets where the prices are falling and more affordable. Let's see. Kay McLean says, trying to find a house, working on funding letter. I hope to have a win soon. Let's keep our fingers crossed for you. 100%. 100%. Let's see. Going to College Station for inspections in the morning. Won a contract for a new home this past Saturday night. Woohoo! Congratulations. Current home, only 2 showings since going public on MLS Wednesday after Labor Day. Oof. Yeah, you may need to sit down with your agent and revisit what's going on with the market there. Maybe the market shifted since you determined what the list price is, which is what is happening. Right now, it's more important than ever to stay on top of what's happening in your local market. And your agent, you can see the data, but your agent should be there to interpret that data, and so you can stay ahead of it as much as you possibly can, or at least keep up with it. Let's see. Oh, hey, Cindy, thank you so much. Here we go. Super chat. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for that super chat. I greatly appreciate it. Appreciate you being here. Let's see. Hopefully this, there we go. All right. Sorry. I'm a little technical. Let's see. Clark in the house. And Clark is one of my referral partners down in Atlanta. I agree people don't fully understand how real estate works. And the lawyer laid that out in the lawsuit, that they don't know the ins and outs of the industry. That's my biggest issue with the NAR lawsuit, is that they truly did not understand how it happens. And do your homework, people, for crying out loud. It's people will not work for free. Are there unscrupulous things happening? You betcha. Are there changes that need to be made? Absolutely. But keep in mind, you've got to know how people are getting paid. And I got to get into that in a second. I got some good stuff for you. So stay tuned. All right. David says, trying to understand why anyone would click contact or request a tour on Zillow. I use it as a search engine. If you want to contact the seller agent, their phone number is on the listing. David, because it's easy. And people don't know any better. That's it. That's the end of the story. It's amazing. You're absolutely right. It's common sense. As my grandmother would say, common sense is not so common. But it is Super. You're sitting at your on your living room sofa and you're scrolling. Oh yeah, I want to see that. Click. Done. Out of sight, out of mind. Like that's it. It takes effort and energy to go the extra step, and that's why. And they suck people in. They make it look very, very enticing. That's their specialty. That's how they make money. Mhm. Okay. Let's see what else we got going on here. Um Clicking contact in Zillow is like clicking on a link to in a spam email. Amen. Amen, amen. This is the thing. This is what, my goal here. I want you guys to advocate for yourself. This is why you need to, you start the process. The very first thing you should do is start interviewing. If you're going to work with an agent, if you need and want the guidance of a professional, right? If you make a conscious decision, this is the way you want to go, start interviewing early so that when you do see something on Zillow, and this is what I always tell my buyers is I say, you know what, just send me a text. I'll give you the ins and outs. I can check the market history. I can check, what's going on in the background. I can give you my 2 cents on the pricing. I can do all that before you go through all the rigmarole of going to see the property. Sometimes we skip it altogether. Let's see here. Alex says exception is dual agency, therefore buyer agent, which is also seller's agent. The world is the word itself. Dual agency is bad. I hate dual agency. I'm adamantly against it. Now I understand that there are different office models. There are different team models, and I've had conversations with folks, send me messages, through Ask Jen a Question forum and all the things. And talking to my referral partners, there are variations. The biggest thing is you want to be working with two. It's important that you have two separate professionals that are not connected. Now, it's impossible to have the prosecuting attorney and the defense attorney be the same person. Guys, does this make sense? No, it does not. Why does it exist? Because unscrupulous agents make more money. End of story. Let's see. All right. Sharon says, I'm confused and ignorant. I wouldn't say that you're ignorant. You're asking the question. I'm hoping to buy sometime next year, hopefully for cash. Good for you. No mortgage. If I offer list price, will I still have to pay more to cover a buyer agent? Well, here's the thing. It all depends on if you have a buyer agent. I do recommend a good buyer agent. If you're working with a sleazy one, an 80% agent, as I call them, you might as well just not work with an agent at all. But if you're working with a professional, seasoned agent, they will have some strategies to work that into the offer. Now, if you are in a situation where it's a competitive offer, there are strategies for that. If you're in an area where it's not competitive, a lot of the country is shifting, I'll show you in a minute, into a more balanced market where if you're the only person coming to the table and you put in there that, listen, I'm going to give you a fair offer, but I'm looking for X percentage to cover my buyer agent fee, the seller would be, if you're the only offer on the table, the buyer is foolish. The seller, excuse me, is foolish for not accepting it if it's at full price, legitimately. So no, you shouldn't have to pay more, necessarily for a buyer agent fee. No, not if you have a good agent that can negotiate on your behalf. For sure, for sure, for sure. I hope that makes sense. But you're not being ignorant. It is confusing. It is very confusing. Let's see here. Lisa says, what if on the listing contract, 5% is listed up front for both agents? I'd rather have only listing commission on the contract and wait on buyer's commission depending on the offer. That is a conversation you need to have with the listing agent. So there are a lot of agents for different reasons that do this. I spoke with an agent, excuse me. I spoke with an agent recently, and they said that, the expectation for buyers in their area was that the sellers are compensating the buyer's agents on all the competing properties in their area. So if you want one of those buyers, if you don't want to lose one of those buyers, you can, and you don't, the seller doesn't have to pay. But the fact of the matter is could they lose money because the house went on the market? Yeah. So is in that particular case, should that be incorporated? Could it be? Potentially, but it should never be 5%. And this is one of the NAR, this is the NAR lawsuit. This is the core of what the NAR lawsuit was about, was to separate the two fees. It shouldn't be listed as two fees. I say this a lot, and I'll say it again. You guys are the captains of the ship. Period. Period. You're the captain of your ship. If you are not comfortable with committing to a buyer agent fee on the listing contract, you need to tell your listing agent and put your heels in and don't waver. And if they say, well, this is the way I do it, then you say, I'm sorry, I need to look for another agent. It's your choice. Now, the listing agent's job, our job, is to explain to you all your options. It is to go over everything and put everything on the table, pros, cons. Here's what's happening in the market. Here's what some options. Here are some strategies. But at the end of the day, it's your decision. It's your decision. It may not be something that I agree with, but it's not up to me. It's not up to me. I'm here to guide you. My job is to make sure that you just understand. You just understand what could happen. If you say, I'm not paying a buyer agent no matter what. And I say, okay, well, 99.9% of the listings in this area are compensating buyer agents. And we're in an area, I personally am not, but if I'll say I'm in an area where the market has shifted and it is more favoring the buyer, and there's the inventory starting to pile up and you have a lot more competition. And I could sit there as a listing agent and say, listen, you need to attract as many buyers as possible. And if you don't help the buyers financially, yes, I understand the pushback, but it is what it is what it is. If you have the prices are what they are, the interest rates are what they are, and affordability is what it is. We can't do anything about that. What we can do is how do we market? We have control over how you market the property. So you say, well, if I want to, if I will say to you, if you want to attract as many buyers, here's how you do it. But if they say, I don't want to, that's not what I'm going to do, then I'm saying, okay, great. That's fine. But you need to understand, we're going to have a hard time, potentially have a hard time or harder time selling this property, period. And as long as the seller knows that, that's their choice. Now, if the agent doesn't want to go along with it, it's not the right agent. You got to dig your heels in. And it's not about being bossy. It's not about telling the agent how to do their business. It's advocating for yourself. I need you to change that mindset. It's not you coming in as a bully and saying, I'm not paying these fees. Mr. Real Estate Agent, you need to do it my way because I'm in charge. Oh, no, no, no. The agent doesn't have to do anything. We're all independent contractors. Nobody tells me how I do my business. And if I have a potential client that's instructing me how to do business, I had a buyer that reached out to me and said, I want to buy a property on the Cape. I says, I'm licensed, but I don't sell property on the Cape. I don't know anything about those areas. And he says, it doesn't matter. You're licensed in Massachusetts. I said, yes. Well, I can just give you the address and you can write the offer. I said, yeah, but I can't advise you on disclosures or the area. He says, it just doesn't matter. You're still going to get paid, right? And I said, listen, I'm not the right agent for you. I was a million plus buyer, buying multiple properties. And I walked away. I said, listen, I made the choice. I don't have to bend to his instructions. Okay. I stuck to the way I want to run my business. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not the right agent for you. That's my choice. So I wanted to just say that to be perfectly clear that, it's not about bullying your agent. It's about standing up for what you want. Two different things. Um, Oh yes. Fabiano says the house market in New Hampshire is getting soft. I believe the market is shifting. Fabiano, yes, it is. It is across the board. I've been keeping my sellers abreast of that situation because we're seeing it. We're starting to see inventory pile up. That being said, I'm hearing from my referral partners daily. Properties are going under agreement across the country in all areas. Strategies. You've got to figure out what the magic bullet is for your buyers to get your buyers to come in. It may not be comfortable. It may not be what you want. It may not be the price that you really want, but you've got to figure out what that magic number is that's going to get people to pull the trigger. And that's something that's in conversation with your listing agent to say, listen, I may not like it, but just tell me what's it going to do to sell this property. And then you can make a decision what you want to do. Let's see. Let's see, give me another super chat.
Super chat.
Thank you very much. Let's see, buyers pulled out, and so did I on July 28th. Reminded realtor pull sign 918. Is this time span to now sign a change of listing? Why is it still pending in Redfin? Will buyers think there's a problem? Oh, okay. Oh, this is such a great question. Okay, first off, if you have to remind the real estate agent to take your sign down over a month later, come on. I mean, unless it's a type of situation where it's a temporary thing, but technically the sign shouldn't be up. As far as the time span for change of listing, so it depends on the MLS. Every MLS is going to be a little bit different. To be perfectly honest, I've forgotten what the time frame is. I'd have to check to see. I haven't done it in quite some time where I have a listing come off the market, then go back on the market. I'll have to check and see if it's 30 or 60 days, might even be 90 days. But there is a window where it doesn't say back on market, it shows as a new listing. Here's the thing though, it when it comes to the time span for it says change of listing, all that information is for the most part, not in every state, for the most part, it is transparent to the consumer. So they just scroll down far enough and you can see the market data on, when did it come on the market? When did it change prices? When did it come off the market? So on and so forth. But as far as it's still showing pending on Redfin, so yes, when you have a listing go out from your MLS and it aggregates out to all the different websites, it should update as the MLS updates. However, here's the thing that is challenging for these websites. Every MLS, every state does it a little bit different. Massachusetts, it'll go from active to pending to under contract. Pending means there's still contingencies, home inspection, purchase and sale, and then it automatically will go to under contract. But pending and under contract in MLS only shows as one status on Zillow. Pending, period. Some real estate, some MLSs will not permit these other websites to even show pending. It'll go active and then off market. And it's not off market, it's pending. And that is how the interpretation of the data that's coming from the MLS to the website. So it really depends on the MLS. What your agent can do is your agent can contact Redfin and say, it's not pending. You need to change this immediately. And they should have, if it was something that maybe because I don't check every single website, it's impossible. There's hundreds of them, to try to track to see which ones are still showing pending and all that. But it sounds like there's a glitch. that the agent or you can reach out to even Redfin and say, hey, listen, it's not even on the market right now, and this needs to be changed. But to answer your questions, will buyer think there's a problem? Potentially. If there's a lot of changes, if there's a lot of price changes, if there's a lot of status changes, the consumers, the buyers now in 2025 are way more educated than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. And are they suspicious? You betcha. 100%. They are. But it's all in the marketing. You got to make sure that when you relist it, maybe you have some different pictures, make sure the write-up is different, to highlight all the things, to make sure that there's no assumptions, by the buyer. I hope that helps you. Okay, I want to get into a little bit behind the scenes. I alluded to it earlier about the referral fees. So one of the big things with this Zillow issue is the referral fees up to 40% that is not disclosed. Now, I do referrals. Yeah, I have, request a referral, all the things on my YouTube channel. My process is starkly different than the referral fees from Zillow and, quite honestly, a lot of agents, where they will just go in and pick the agent who has the highest number of sales, and that's it. You connect it and you're done. And if you have asked to refer a referral from me and it's in an area that may be a little challenging and you've had to wait, you understand what I'm talking about, because I go through a pretty deep process interviewing agents. I start with a pool that belong to a high level group of agents that are top agents in the country of this coaching program that I'm still affiliated with, that that I've been affiliated with for almost 20 years. The agents in that program run their business relationally. So I start there. Not all of them are 20% agents, but I start there. And then I go through and check their credentials and how long they've been in the business and all the things. It's a long drawn out. It's a long process. It's a long vetting process. Okay. That being said, I very, very, very much want to walk the walk here, guys. And as and demonstrate, not just say, but show. So if you have filled out any of those forms, there's a box. When you fill out the form, at the very bottom, there's a box. Jen, if you decide to use this agent, no obligation, I do receive a referral fee. And I will tell you, I have no problem saying that it's usually between 20 and 25%. And you may say, oh my God, that's a lot of money. Guys, 30 years I've been in this business. When I receive a referral, 25% is what I have always paid out. And that is, I'm not going to say it's an industry standard because it's not standardized or regulated by anybody, but it is a common practice that when an agent sends a referral to another agent in another part of the country, 25% is the norm. It's acceptable. It's an acceptable practice because it's the cost of doing business. And I'm going to get into this in a second with this article, but it's the cost of doing business. Every agent incurs business costs to run their business because they're all independent. Most of them are not 1099s. They're not W-2s rather. So it's not uncommon. However, there's a right way and a wrong way to do referrals. And Housing Wire posted this as a result of the Zillow, as far as the result of the Zillow lawsuit. They posted this the other day, and it says, the hidden toll booth. Do referral fees keep real estate commissions inflated? I wanted to talk about this because you guys have reached out, and you know what? They're great questions. I'm not afraid of hard questions. I want you guys to ask hard questions. And you guys have reached out and said, hey, Jen, if I use your agent, will my commission be inflated because my agent has to pay you a referral fee? My answer is always, if you're working with an 80% agent, likely yes. Not on a 20% agent. And if it is, please let me know. And that's why I go back because I can't dictate what my referral partners charge. That would be a big violation. I can't tell someone how to run their own business, but I don't have to. But it's my choice to whether I have them in my, as a referral partner. But it's a great question. So this article goes into, this is why commissions stayed high and referral fees kept control in real estate. This is a year after the NAR settlement. Commissions were supposed to fall. Consumers were supposed to have choices. Agents were supposed to negotiate more openly. On paper, it looked promising. In practice, almost nothing changed. Commissions actually rose from a year earlier. I went into detail on this on a video that I posted not too long ago, several months ago. It says the silence in the industry isn't confusing. It's a relief. Margins didn't move. The power structure that benefits a select few remained untouched. The referral fee engine. It says at the center of it all is the quiet engine that runs real estate referral fees. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that statement, but it says even though they appear in only a fraction of transactions, they act as the toll booth that sets the value of a customer, raising acquisition costs for everyone else. Don't agree that I personally don't agree with that. But for the 80% agent and for the portals, I would agree. It says portals, brokers, even trusted voices like Dave Ramsey take their cut. This is a common practice. A closed deal can be worth up to 40% of an agent's commission. Zillow, this is on a home, just for an introduction. This is why I said that stuff that I said earlier. Because what I do for my referral fee, because I guided by a different moral compass, I guess. I want to make sure that I walk the walk, but also provide value for the money that I'm receiving. I mean, I love doing this. I love talking to you guys, but at the end of the day, I got to pay a mortgage too, and I got to put food on the table and all the things, and run a business. And no one's giving me there's no guaranteed paycheck from anyone. That's a choice. That's my business model, and that's the way it works. But this is why commissions are what they are. You don't have to like it. I'm explaining to you how it works. It says Zillow thrives on free brand traffic while everyone else pays $2,000 to $3,000 per customer to compete. That moat is why new ideas never pencils, is why there's no price competition. And there's a lot in this article that I don't think is 100% accurate, but some of it is very accurate. It says consumers never see the effects of those fees. According to NAR, 3 out of 4 buyers hire the first agent they meet. I bang that drum if you are new here. I repeat extensively. I very often throughout my videos interview multiple agents. I connect you with one of my referral partners. Interview multiple agents. Why? Because even though they're a great agent, it may not be the right agent for you. It may not be the right agent for you. But when you meet one of my referral partners, you might discover that the agent that you thought was a great agent was not a 20% agent. I hear that all the time. Just because they're nice and they seem caring, they may not be proficient. They may not have experiential knowledge, all the things. It is so crucial to interview more than one agent, because this is the fact. This 3 out of 4 buyers, I would say 3 out of 4 sellers as well, they hire the first agent they meet. It says portals reinforce this dynamic by funneling each shopper to a single preferred choice. They sell you on the fact that these agents are screened and they're the best of the best and all the things. There's no screening. None. It's whether you can pay the fee or not. That's all they care about. Period. You're not getting an agent that is exceptional. You're getting an agent that is available. They may sell one house. They may sell 10. They may sell 100 this year. Doesn't matter. They pay the fee. That's their only criteria. It says there's no click to compare, no real way to weigh options side by side. It says with customers valued up to $12,000, there's no incentive for anyone. I don't know where they get that $12,000. They're just averaging the commissions. There's no incentive for anyone in the chain to lower commissions. The funnel protects the tolls. I would say, in terms of, yes, I would say incentive to lower commissions, yes. However, the other thing that they're not talking about is, which actually gets hinted in the next paragraph, is the cost of doing business. The commissions that I charge are based on the fact that I could not keep my doors open if I didn't charge those fees. It just is. It just is. because no one else is giving me, there's no other money streams. Um, it says agents as expendable labor. It's not just portals. And I just want to preface this too, guys. This is not a um and I'm very passionate about this. This is not a defending position. I am not defending the real estate agent, the real estate industry here. I am not defending my position as a real estate agent. I am not. It's not about me. Okay, you guys pay really, really good money for commissions. And you deserve to get top-notch value. Um, but this is my choice. It's my choice to not, to not have a guaranteed paycheck every week for the past 30 years. That's my choice. It's not your problem. It's not your problem on how I pay the bills, how I keep the lights on. Not your problem. I am not trying to say, oh, but this is, poor me. No, 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 no. That's not where I'm going here. Again, the reason I'm bringing this up is I want to give you this information so that you can understand and then advocate for yourself. So I just wanted to make that point clear to you guys. It says it's not just portals. NAR funds the largest lobbying machine in the country with agent dues, and every agent pays the same whether they sold 30 homes last year or none at all. That is true. An actual majority of its agents close no deals, yet they still pay in. That is true. The whole thing is the system's broken. This is why the industry is in the condition that it's in. It says that war chest doesn't protect the struggling majority. It protects the few who benefit most from the status quo. Brokerages hire agents by the dozen because it costs nothing. Brokerages don't pay agents anything. You can walk into any agent, and as long as you haven't had any major infractions and you pay the monthly dues, you can hang your license there. It's not a big deal at all because it doesn't cost them any money. However, the brokerage gets a piece of every transaction that agent sells. So what that means is that the core business model of a real estate agent brokerage office typically is the more agents you have, the more money you make. And that is why this whole system doesn't work. And I need you to understand that when you're interviewing agents, just because they're nice people doesn't mean they're good at their job. Period. Most never gain traction. Many join as a side hustle. Please ask if your agent is working full-time or part-time. Part-time does not work in this industry, guys. It doesn't. Quality suffers, but membership rises, and that's what matters most because anyone wants to line their pockets. Nearly half of agents exit the industry within 5 years, according to NAR's 2025 member profile and broader industry reports, with 62% of new agents earning under $10,000 annually. What they don't mention is that 60% of the agents that are in the industry right now got in the business the last 5 years. Last 5 years during COVID, during pandemic, when you didn't need a skill set, you literally just showed up, you hung a sign, the house sold. You got to be very careful. I am very careful. Most of the agents that I have in my referral program are at least 10 years in the business. Do I have a few that are not? Yes. Do I scrutinize and have conversations and look at their history and and see what kind of coaching they've had and all that stuff? You betcha. Because can you have a great agent that has been in less than 10 years? Yes. It is not a hard and set rule that's what the agent has to do. But you got to scrutinize it. It goes on to talk about teams and when it says agents that are often expected to work for free, shouldering risk with no guarantee of pay. And then when they do finally close a deal, massive shares already been promised away. Again, not your problem, but just from the standpoint of understanding. And it says, after giving free labor, every commission must be maximized, which is why I wanted to point out this fact, because to say that there's price fixing in real estate is the biggest crock of you know what. It's not price fixing, it's a matter of survival for a lot of agents. Why? Because if they're not selling a house, they're literally working for free. They could spend 10, 20, 30 hours. Is that your problem? No, it's not your problem. It's not your problem. But this is why there's pressure. This is why these agents join these companies and why they're going to stick by their guns, and why they're going to, a lot of them succumb to that 80% mindset where they'll do anything to get the deal done. It says Redfin proves that there's no shortage of agents willing to work as employees, and Redfin is one of the few that is an employer-employee relationship for steady pay and benefits. But traditional brokers don't want that model because they don't make money. It would collapse margins, kill the myth of mega producer, yada yada yada. And it does go on to, like, talk about the power players at Rocket. Zillow's not the only one. Rocket Mortgage is getting into it, is doubling down on referral fees and all the things. And it says, and the system forces agents to feed it. NAR and MLS require every agent to surrender their listings into databases that ultimately fuel portals like Zillow. Agents create the data, but they don't control it. And the portal turns around and sells it back to them at 40%. Think about that for a second. I put a listing in the computer, I put it in the MLS, it goes out to Zillow. They say, click on the link for an agent. They contact, I'm not in the Zillow Flex program, but say if I was, they'd contact me. They're literally selling the buyer back to me at 40%. What? It's bogus. I don't know. Anyways, I wanted to cover that because I think it kind of ties into the Zillow lawsuit, understanding kind of like the back end of the Zillow lawsuit and the pit holes, the holes in the lawsuit, and why it may or may not get traction. Okay, I'm not gonna forget about those other things I want to talk about, but I want to just hit the comments here. See what's up. Let's see. Aria says, how do I get out of my listing agreement with a realtor? Oh, I love this question. So you got to do it. So there's a couple pieces of advice, and I went into this in a recent video, actually. Towards the end, I went into detail on this. I want to say it was my last video, but I'm not quite sure. I don't remember. Here's the thing. You can break a contract, especially if it's a violation of what they promised you. So what does that mean? They promised you timely updates. They promised you to, give you advice. They promised you guidance, yada, yada. If they have violated any of those things, you can break the contract. Here's the thing about your listing agreement, and this is the thing that is so important before you sign it. Obviously, you want to try to read it and look through and make sure there's no cancellation fees and things of that nature. I don't have any cancellation fees in mine. If somebody doesn't like me or what I'm doing, it is 99.9% of the time, I don't like them either. And I'm happy to let them go. 110%. But say you didn't have a chance to do that, and you're like, oh, geez, man, I made a big mistake. I didn't realize. I hear from you guys all the time, with those exact words. I will encourage you to push back. So what do you do? Number one, you're going to do everything by email and in writing. Don't do it by phone. Don't do it by text. Send an email. Send an email to a broker. Have it drafted out. Use ChatGPT in a professional tone and all the things. You don't go all Karen on them. But listen, I'm unhappy with my level of service. I want to cancel my contract. Please send me a cancellation form. I do not want to have my home listed with your agency any longer. Period. If you don't get any response, if you don't get the response you want, you go to the broker. The broker that is running the agency. You do the same with them. If they start to bully you, and they might, there's a good chance. If all they care about is the commissions, all they care about is locking you in, why would any agent want to lock in a buyer or seller that doesn't want to be there? They will, because all they want is the money. Now you push back harder. And one of the things you could do is reach out. Number one, you can reach out to a local real estate attorney that can give you guidance. Maybe you throw them a few bucks and have them write an email for you. You can say, hey, listen, I talked to my attorney. Sometimes that's just enough. You could also, if you have interviewed other agents in the meantime, and yes, as a seller, when you have your property on the market, when you are under contract with an agent, as an agent, I cannot approach you. That is a total violation of NAR practices. It's not against the law, it's a violation of NAR practices. I, as an agent, cannot approach a home seller that has a contractual agreement with another agent. But the home seller can approach me. And I get that from you guys all the time. Fill out referral forms. I got my house listed. I made a huge mistake. Can you send me an agent? You're instigating, so you absolutely can talk to another agent. If you have done that and you've interviewed other agents, which I would definitely recommend, just to make sure that you're like, okay, I'm not, what my expectations are reasonable, that I don't want to just cancel a contract and I'm going to end up having the same thing with another agent because I didn't have reasonable expectations. But when you are, if you're, talking to another agent, you interview those agents, if you settle on a great agent that you would rather work with, you can ask them that question and get some advice. They can't do it for you. They cannot cancel that listing contract, nor should they. That would be unethical for them to get involved that way. And if they are willing to do that, I would question whether they're if they're an 80% agent, because they may be just looking for commission check themselves. But my big advice to you, Aria, is don't let the agent bully you, because that is what is likely going to happen. Stand firm. It is not going to be comfortable. Is not. It's a business transaction. That's where you got to take, okay, your agent, if you have a good relationship and you like them, it's going to be hard, but you got to take that friendly hat off and put on your business hat. Not your bully hat, not your Karen hat, but your business hat, and say, it is what it is. I'm so sorry. I need a change. And don't give up until you do. Once you have that contract, once you have that release signed, then you can start working with another agent. So I hope that makes sense. And in a nutshell, because you shouldn't have to be locked into any agent that isn't doing their job. Let's see. Krista says, my neighbor just signed a contract for 5%. The listing agent said her fee is 2.5%. So she assumed that she'd pay the buying agent 2.5%. Do you think that was a mistake? I don't think that's not the way I would advise doing it. I'm concerned about the fact that she said that she assumed, like, there should have been a conversation with the listing agent. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't, that the buyer agent fee is 2.5%. But it's only a mistake if that's not what you want. There's nothing saying that you can't do that. My advice to my home sellers is don't put anything in the contract about the buyer agent fee. Wait and see what happens at the negotiations. But if you want to offer the buyer agent fee as an incentive because of the market you're in, all that, that's not bad. That's strategy. But it's got to be the strategy that your neighbor wants, not the listing agent shouldn't be dictating that. The listing agent should not be dictating what the strategy is. The seller should be the one that should be dictating that. Let's see here. All right. Alex says, even if it is not listed on the website, it sounds like the buyer agents know ahead of time if the seller is paying the buyer's fee. So absolutely, buyers across the country, which they shouldn't be doing it. The buyers are a lot of them are calling the listing agents ahead of time to see what the sellers are willing to pay. This is just my opinion. My opinion is if they're doing that, they don't know how to negotiate. Period. They don't know how to negotiate. Because why do you need to do that? If a buyer agent calls me, I tell them the seller is absolutely willing to review all terms of an offer. Send it on over. Plain and simple. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no. It depends on the offer. Depends on the offer. Depends on how good the offer is. But the buyer agent, if the buyer agent's out there calling and asking for those fees ahead of time, and then potentially making the decision on what they want to tell you, which house they want to tell you about based on which ones are paying a buyer agent fee. That's why I don't like that practice, because it leaves the door open for less than scrupulous behavior, and they're putting their needs before yours and that stuff. No can do. No can do. Yeah, we just talked about that. Do you verbally discuss it with the buyer's agent before the contract? Absolutely not. I don't. I do not negotiate an offer on behalf of the seller without the seller involved. Period. It's not my house. It's not my house. I don't. That's not. That would be. That's unethical. It's unethical. Underhanded, which is prevalent in this industry. Mary says, what's the difference between pending and contingent? Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. It's just every MLS is going to have different criteria, and every MLS is going to have a different definition. Contingent means that, if you see a contingent as a status, it could mean that they haven't done a home inspection yet. Massachusetts is a 2-contract state where we have a separate offer and a separate purchase and sale agreement. A lot of states, it's all done at the beginning. But for our contingency, that needs to be done within the first 10 to 14 days. The home inspection needs to be done between 10 and 14 days. So until we get past those two things, we don't go to pending status. But it's still a signed agreement. Regardless of whether pending contingent means, it still means the same thing at the end of the day. The buyer and the seller are under a contractually obligating agreement, which means the seller cannot accept another offer. Well, asterisk, because there are some contingencies out there that will give the seller, it's called a kick-out clause. Not to go into this too much into the weeds, but there's a contingency called a kick-out clause, which basically says, and we may be seeing more of this actually, going forward, where if a seller, say, accepts an offer from a buyer that needs to sell their house, it's subject to the buyer, getting a contract signed on their house. But the buyer made a great offer. They don't want to lose the buyer because there's nobody else on the table. So they may accept that offer, but put a kick-out clause on it, which means the property continues to be shown, that continues to be marketed as a property that has under agreement with a kick-out, which means it's under contract. The seller can't just accept another offer on their own. However, they can go to the buyer, and it's either going to be 24 or 48 hours. And they can, if another offer came in, they can go to the buyer and say, listen, Mr. Buyer, I got another offer that I would like to accept over yours. You have 24 hours to remove your contingency, which is the thing that is, making the other offer better. And that's a kick out. And at that point, the buyer can either remove it and stay under contract, or they walk away, and now the seller can accept another offer. So I wanted to throw that in as an option. So hopefully sorry for the long-winded answer. Angie says, with 2 more rate cuts forecast, do you think the buyers will just wait until next year to buy? And why would you not put negotiable in listings, since a lot will depend on the actual sale price? Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think everything's negotiable, and that's why, one of the things that when a buyer's agent calls me on a listing, if that's what you're referring to, I tell them that. I tell them everything's negotiable. The seller will entertain all offers, because we had this exact circumstance just recently with a client I'm working with, a seller, where we had 5 or 6 offers. I put it on a spreadsheet, and I always talk about the net. The net is sale price minus whatever the closing cost, whatever the credits, whatever the buyer is asking. Forget about the closing costs on the seller side. We're not talking about what the listing agent, gets paid or none of that stuff. We're talking about what the buyer's expectations are. So sale price minus they're asking for 2%. They're asking for 2.5%. They're asking for 3%, compensation to their buyer agent. Sale price minus this net. What is the walkaway amount? We had multiple offers, went through the net. We had several offers that were above asking, pretty good above asking. Well, we had one offer that came in with no buyer agent fee because the buyer the mother is a real estate attorney and was going to represent them with no buyer agent fee. Their offer, even though the offer price was lower, their net was higher than the other offers with the buyer agent fee. Everything else, of course, there's more to it than that, and looked at, the other financing and, yada, yada, yada. But the sellers ended up going with that scenario, and I was 100% behind them to do it because it made the most sense. But for sure, it does come down. It always comes down to the net. But you asked about two more rate cuts, and you think the buyers will just wait. So I actually had an interview, a conversation, buyer consultation a couple days ago on Monday with a first-time home buyer, and she asked that exact thing. And I think a lot of buyers will wait out of fear. I think a lot of buyers will wait out of uncertainty. But what I told her is I said, you need to look at your own personal finances, your own personal situation. What is affordable? What makes sense? We went into the weeds. We got into deep as far as, what her, financial picture was. Does she have a budget? Does she have reserves? What does she have for down payment? And is that separate or part of her reserves? Super important. You don't want to buy a house with no money in the bank. But I said to her, I says, there's pros and cons to waiting. Yes, you could get a lower rate. However, the ebb and flow here in the Northeast, the ebb and flow of the market is such that once we get to the end of October, the market softens. Every year, seasonal adjustments. We get into the holidays, and then we get into winter. And that is typically the slowest time. It's usually when prices dip. When we turn the corner towards the end of February, we start gearing up for a spring market. Now, this year's spring market was nothing. It was stinky. There was nothing happening. But in a typical spring market, you have an influx of listings. You have an influx of buyers, which means you have more competition. So I said to her, I says, if the Fed lowers the rate, which doesn't directly affect the mortgage rate, right? Talk about that all the time in terms of, what does? Well, investor activity and treasury. The treasury bonds are, the yield on the treasury bond is what directly affects investor activity, which affects the mortgage rates. I'm going to touch on what happened after last week's meeting in a second. But if there's a marginal adjustment, say the rates go down 0.25% or 0.5%, what happens if, even though the rates go down, the prices went up because of more competition, and you're actually spending more money for that house than if you bought it now? And now you're under time pressure. It's a whole thing. You're under time pressure because you have more competition. You may have to bid up on the properties. You got to react faster. All the things. Everybody's going to be different. It's your tolerance to that type of process, time pressures. What is your pressures on moving? You got to take a holistic approach to the whole picture. It's not set in stone to wait. It is not. Maybe you should wait. Maybe you shouldn't. So my advice to her is, we'll start the process. She's at the very beginning, getting her pre-approval and all the things. I said, get yourself set up. Get a pre-approval. Pre-approvals are usually 90 days and you can renew it. But at least get yourself set up so you can react quickly and then start casually looking. If you find something, you're in a position, then do it. If the finances work, you can afford it comfortably. It's location, it checks all the boxes. Like, why wouldn't you move? Why wouldn't you? This is not about, buying now and refinancing later. No, that's not what we're talking about. Date the rate, marry the house or some garbage. I hate that saying. I really do. It's very misleading. You should buy when you can afford it, period. Assume the rate will never change, period. And if you can, then do it. But if you're not comfortable, then wait. and then deal with whatever comes at that time. But I wanted to get into, thanks for asking that question there, Angie. So last week, the Fed, met 16th, 17th, Wednesday. They dropped the rate 0.25%, the Fed rate, a quarter basis point, which a lot of folks, reacted. Well, geez, the mortgage rates went down, all the things. Oh, contraire, mon frere. It does not. Exactly what I was alluding to in the last live stream. The rates, as we see them here, right? We have 9/12. So it's a Friday before the Fed meeting. It was at 6.29. Actually, if we go as far as the end of September 2nd, they were at 6.53. This is an example of investor activity influencing the rate, and directly, in fact, as a result of the Treasury bond yield, it dropped down before the Fed announcement 6.13. But look what happened. 9/18, 6.373, 6.37%. And then that was on 9/18. The Fed met on, I'm getting my cursor to work here, 9/17. 9/17 is when the Fed met, dropped the rate. Look what mortgage rates did. This is why there's no correlation. The rate is 6.375. That's 6.3. God, I can't talk. 6.37%. The 50-year average is 7%. Yes, I understand. It's still unaffordable and all the things, but this is where we're at right now. I just wanted to do mention this as a quick follow-up because I think it's important. Now, the other thing that came up in conversation on Friday, it was an article by Mortgage News Daily, is mortgage applications. I saw a couple comments on the old YouTubes and on other videos and things of that nature, telling people, oh, mortgage applications are in the tank. Nobody wants to buy a house. Not true, my friends. This is the data. It says for the first time in several years, we had to take our chart of the Mortgage Banker Association's refinance applications all the way back to 2022 in order to provide context for the levels achieved this week. Until now, September 2024 set the high water mark. Okay, this was as of last week. Look at this. Mortgage applications are not in the tank. What does this say? Now, Angie, getting back to your comment about waiting on the mortgage rates, people are preparing to make a jump. The rates have come down, prices have slowed. Even if they've not come down significantly, they're not appreciating like they were before. I read an article last week that wages were actually up 4%. A little bit, every little bit counts. This tells me that the mortgage applications indicate, now it could be indications for the spring, it could be indications for people taking advantage of the market over the winter. Nonetheless, buyers are gearing up. Buyers that want to buy very, very rarely do they say, well, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm going to not buy and stay put for the next 10, 15 years. Does that happen occasionally? But what's normal and what typically happens is buyers will say, I'm not going to buy now. So as a home seller, maybe concerned about the number of buyers out there, they're still there. They just haven't been given a reason to buy it, and it's coming. This tells me it's coming. It says there's a whopping 58% increase in refinance demand versus last week, and it's 70% higher the same week a year ago. Purchase index rose 3%, but that leaves it near the best levels since 2023. There are changes brewing. And this is the kind of stuff that I watch when you ask about, whether, what's ahead of us with the market. These are the kind of indicators that give us clues on what might be around the corner. Now, the foreclosure, this came out yesterday, and this is the U.S. foreclosure map you need to see. Foreclosures are making headlines, which they are. So many YouTubers are banging that drum about foreclosures, and foreclosures are coming, and everybody's complaining about it, not being able to afford their house. Well, yeah, it's hard, and interest. The taxes are going up, and the HOA fees are going up, and insurance costs are going up, and so on and so forth. And a lot of people are having trouble. How I can't afford my mortgage is one of the top searches in Google for months. It's not easy. However, foreclosure is not always the result. It says that even though that's the case, is foreclosure starts are up 7% the first 6 months, but zooming out shows that that's nowhere near crisis levels. This is so important. This is so important. It says even with the recent uptick, and I'm not. This is just data, guys. Overall foreclosure filings are still very low. In the first half of 2025, just 0.13% of homes filed foreclosure. That's less than 1% of homes in the country. In fact, it's even far less than that at under a quarter of a percent. It's a small fraction of the homes out there. And he says, here's the map that are filing for foreclosure for that 0.13%. It says for context, which context is everything. If I said to you 7%, you're like, oh my God, that's a lot. That's a lot of foreclosures. Context. The data from Adam, which is a reputable data source, in my opinion, where they get their data from. There's no outside influences. Says that shows that the first half of 2025, 1 in 758 homes nationwide had a foreclosure filing, and that sounds scary. But what you need to do is make that comparison. It says, but back in 2010, now 2010 is when post Great Financial Crisis, when people had to walk away in droves. They got so underwater. They were so, absolutely unaffordable. The mortgage payments went through the roof. They walked away. I mean, it was an epidemic for foreclosures. Back in 2010, during the crash, Mortgage News Daily says it was 1 in 45. Context. 2010, 1 in 45 was filing foreclosure. Now, 1 in 758. This is how we manage our freak out. This is how we manage data. And this is how we make sure that the news doesn't dictate our actions. Okay. Let me get to the chat here. See what's popping. See what you guys for questions. All right. Make sure I don't skip over anybody. Oh, here we go. Miss H says the referral fee is that off the price of the home sold or bought? Confused who pays the fee. So the referral fee is the cost of doing business to the agent that receives the fee. It could be a buyer agent. It could be a listing agent. It's one of the, it's whoever is receiving that referral. So if I connect you with one of my referral partners to buy a house, they know that if they get hired and when you finally buy that house and it closes, whatever their commission is, I get a piece of that. That's it. Now, one of the questions I've been asking my referral partners is, do you inflate your commissions to compensate for referral fees? The 20% agents do not. The only time I have done that is back in the day when I was cutting my teeth on the industry. I was new. I worked with some relocation companies that gouged the heck out of you. Some of those relocation companies are looking upwards towards almost 50% referral fees. And when you're new and all the things, I'm like, I can't take this referral fee, but I don't have any other business. So I took it and then up the commission. I told the seller about it. The seller, if the seller is using a relocation company, the seller understands the process. So it wasn't everything was disclosed. But when I get a regular referral, well, my fee is the fee. I absorb the fee. I pay the fee because it's the cost of doing business. There's a cost associated with being a real estate agent, period. Whether it's buying your business cards or paying for signs or paying for advertising or photography, whatever, it's a cost of doing business, period. So I hope that answers your question. And it's a great question. If an agent ever says to you that my fee is higher because I have to pay out a referral fee, if it's one of my referral agents, you need to let me know immediately. But if you're talking to an agent, interviewing an agent, that's not that's not an 80% agent. Alex says, if you received a request from a seller to negotiate commission, if you received a request from a seller to negotiate commission, would you be more willing to accept a lower commission for a $2 million house versus a $500,000 house? Me personally, yes. I think that's fair. I guess well, I'm gonna take a step back and say it depends. It depends on what my outlay is on the marketing on that house, because in a lot of circumstances, a more expensive house may require extended, more elaborate marketing. So I talked to my referral partners, say in California, and they pay big bucks for professional staging. They pay big bucks for, uber professional photographers, like not your run-of-the-mill photographers, uber professional photographers, all the different things, out of pocket. Some pay some, they bring in extra stuff for staging, furniture, and all the things. Staging can cost $10,000 or more just in itself. So you're not necessarily going to do that. I don't typically do that. My, the average sale price is much lower than that here in where I'm at. And so that's not the expectation. I don't have that outlay. But for sure, did it recently on a more expensive property, because I think it's a fair thing to do, to be honest. Let's see. I'm looking for QQQ. Sharon says, do you have a list of questions for a potential buyer agent? You know what? I don't. I mean, being that my content in my channel is focused on homeowners, home sellers, I don't do a lot of content on potential buyers. However, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of overlap. If you go through any of my videos on how to, what not to say to an agent, how to interview an agent, the questions to ask an agent, you can go through and pick and choose. And there's a lot, those questions are the same on both sides of the table. So, that should help. I don't have a written list. However, it is something on my to-do list. All right. I know you guys have so many. I'm sorry if I'm skipping over your comments, and I want to be respectful of your time here. But I want to get to my QQQ questions. Angie says, how often do you think it states in the contract that it can be terminated if either party isn't happy? Honestly, not often. I mean, I will tell folks verbally that if you're not happy, please, transparency is everything. Just let me know. I mean, if they don't want to work with me, probably don't want to work with them. But I absolutely positively in my conversations with my referral partners, a lot of them do that. If there's any dissatisfaction, if I'm not giving you the service that you expected, then please let me know and this contract can be terminated. So it's not uncommon. It's not going to be in every contract. Lisa asks, could you talk about vacancy insurance? My insurance company doesn't insure vacant homes due to vandalism, thefts, etc. The insurance company suggested I stage the house to keep coverage. Okay. The insurance company suggested that you stage a vacant house to keep it covered. Sounds kind of shady. I'm not going to lie. That sounds misleading. I'm not, maybe your agent suggested that as a workaround. There are other insurance companies, though. I mean, like national companies that if your insurance company doesn't offer it, because the insurance companies are really pulling back on their policies and what they will and won't do, you may have to go to another insurance company, and shop around. But you definitely want to make sure that you have vacant home insurance. Vacant home insurance basically says that, because if you read the fine print on an average home insurance policy, it says maybe it's your primary residence, and there's a different policy for investment property or second home, a property. If you claim that that's your primary residence and you don't live there anymore and the house burns to the ground, they very well could say, we have grounds not to pay you a nickel. That could be a problem. You can see how this could be hugely detrimental. So having vacant coverage is so important, like true vacant coverage. Staging it to, if what happens if your insurance company finds out you're living somewhere else? Now you potentially you're going to be in the hole for a lot of money. I would be very careful with that. I hope that answers your question. Norton asks, what's your opinion of Open Door? You know what? We don't have, it doesn't have a presence here. I would be very careful. If it's an online discount brokerage, that's all it is. You get what you pay for. You should treat that just like any other agent interview. Don't, somebody's not getting something for nothing. I had a homeowner the other day that is, preparing their house to go on the market, and the house is in a little bit, it's in rough shape. So it's got a lot of deferred maintenance. And he's like, Jen, I got a card in the mail for these buy as is, cash in the bank deals and all the things. What do you think? I said, call them, see what they say. I said, don't sign anything, but just see what they say. He never did. I kind of wanted him to make the call, but the way these companies work, they have to make money. If they're doing it for a discount, how do they get paid? This company, that the Buy Your Ugly House or whatever, they get paid by undercharging, by undervaluing your property. They're going to undervalue your property. They're going to fix it up on the cheap, and they're going to sell it, and they're going to make a ton of money. That's how they get paid. Nobody does anything for free. It just is. These companies, they always do anything out of the goodness of their heart when you're talking business. It's just that's the way the business world works. But you know what? I think that I'm not saying that no one should ever use them. I think you just got to be very careful and read the fine print. But I don't have any specific comments on Open Door because I haven't actually had any dealings with them. None. All right. Let's see if anybody else. All right. I've got all my questions answered. I am going to get to the chat in a second. Chicky says, I entered into agreement with a seller who needs to first sell their home. They are currently getting outbid or declined. What should I do? I entered into an agreement with a seller who I'm a little confused on your question. Entered an agreement with a seller who needs to sell their home. So what was your agreement? Are you the buyer? If you're the buyer, so are you the seller and you entered into an agreement with a buyer who needs to sell their home? Is that what you're asking? Can you just clarify that? Yeah, I'm a little confused on that question, Chicky. If you could clarify that, that would be great. So, sorry, I get an itchy nose tonight. My grandmother used to say, "That's somebody's talking about you if you have an itchy nose." Somebody's talking. Hopefully, they're saying good things. Wendy says, it's a horrible industry. I assume you're talking about the real estate industry. It's a horrible industry. I was very good, and it was very hard to make money. My broker even took a cut when I sold my own home. Being a real estate agent is not for the faint of heart. And I was interviewing a new referral partner today. And as I often tell my referral partners, I run, treat these referrals and all the things like I approach these, the referrals or approach my business the same way. And that is, do the right thing for the right reason. Take care of people. You do that, the money will follow. And that takes a lot of faith to do that. And I understand that, but that comes through. That comes through in translation to the way I show up in all the things with my clients. Not everybody can do that. And when you're scraping nickels together, and then you don't have a good solid book of business because you maybe haven't had training, maybe you haven't had, maybe you're in an area that's hard felt. Although I'm going to tell you right now that even the hardest hit areas in this country, my referral partners are still busy and getting things happening for their clients and all the things because of the skill set. They have the skill set, and you can adapt. That skill set doesn't stay the same. It constantly adapts to whatever the environment is in the real estate industry at that time. But it is hard. It requires, I have done so much training and courses and designations and all the things. It's a long list. I'm going to head over to the poll real quick, see what things are popping on the poll. Let's see here. All right, so we got 119 of you guys voted. Thank you very much. And the question was, when you request a tour on Zillow, who are you expecting to contact you? 6% said, listing agent 37%, buyer agent 14%. That itself is exactly why there's a lawsuit. That's exactly why there's a lawsuit. Either just want to see the house, 6%, and then 43% of you said, I would never go through Zillow. Amen. Please don't go through Zillow blindly. It's not in your best interests. It is not in your best interest. I think that Karen says, hey, now easy on the Karens. My apologies. Definitely, you know what? There are wonderful people by the name of Karen that are not a Karen. Double quote, end quotes. So I am, my apologies. For sure. I got a couple late questions. Let's see. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second here. Oh, or did we? Good grief. Okay. Yeah, I think we're good. Sorry, I thought there was a couple of questions that I missed, but I digress because it's getting to that witching hour. We're gonna keep an eye on these things. I'm gonna keep an eye on this Zillow lawsuit. We're gonna keep an eye on the interest rates. We're gonna keep an eye on foreclosure rate. We're gonna keep an eye on the wages. All these things, and of course, inventory. All of these things, not just one, all of these things affect what happens in our housing market. Guys, it's not a straight line. It is not, no matter what anybody tells you, it is not an easy fix. And never, ever, ever, please do not time your plans. Do not time whether you sell or buy on the market. It'll end nothing but heartbreak. You can't. It's like time in the stock market. Nobody can do it perfectly. You can't. You don't have a crystal ball. So what should you do instead? Do your homework. Find out what is best for you and your situation. What is best for you? Do the pros, do the cons, do your homework, do your research. But at the end of the day, it's all about what's best for you. It doesn't matter the month of the year or the season. Guys, thank you so much for spending your valuable time hanging out with me tonight. I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate all you guys in the chat, all you guys watching, and I appreciate everybody that tunes in after the fact. I really, really, I love the community here. I love to be able to share this information with you, and I hope that it is of value. So next week, we'll dig into again, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Same bat time, same bat channel. In the meantime, be good to your neighbor, be kind, and as I always say, if you don't see eye to eye with someone, you disagree on whatever, the weather, politics, or anything, if you don't disagree, can we not judge, but seek to understand instead? Don't judge to conclusions. Don't jump to conclusions. Seek to understand. You don't have to agree with them, but try to understand. I think if we have more of that in this day and age, it'd be a happier place to live. All right, guys, have a great week. Be good, and I'll see you next week. Ciao.